Ask anyone who knows who knights are, and the answer will probably be that they were warriors who wore heavy metal armor and lived in stone castles. What else? Where did the knights come from? Were they different from non-members, only in their armor? Or was there something else? We offer you a fascinating journey into the world of knights, acquaintance with their life, their habits, their manners and, of course, with the essential things that make them knights worthy, their armor. This is also the introduction to knights, the brutal and dark history of the Middle Ages. The heyday of the knighthood was in the 12th and 14th centuries. And with the advent of firearms, the role of these armored warriors was reduced to nothing. But, getting acquainted with the knights, we will also get acquainted with their predecessors, because this historical phenomenon did not appear out of nowhere. So, you and I are going back in time, when there were no knights. Let us think back many thousands of years, to the era of the primitive communal system, when there were no knights at all, when people had not yet learned how to smelt metal and ride horses. But even then, at the dawn of their history, people were belligerent, constantly fighting each other, using long spears with sharpened stone tips, flint daggers, and in their heavy wooden clubs they inserted spikes from the teeth of predators, so that their wounds would be more dangerous. At the same time, people invented protection against these weapons. A blow to the head made of an animal skin helmet wasn't as bad as a blow to the unprotected skull. An arrow that hit the bone protective plate protecting the chest didn't reach its aim, and a thick mammoth skin softened a spear blow. Nature itself told man how best to attack and defend himself. At the same time, concepts of what should be a warrior, brave, strong, and fearless began to appear. The brave ones were rewarded and celebrated before the whole tribe, and the cowards were expelled, or even executed, for example, drowned in the swamp, so that it was not a crime for others. When about 6,000 years ago people learned to smelt copper and bronze, warriors had a new weapon, mellicle. They were lighter than Chinese warriors of the 13th and 12th centuries BC. 3. In a shell made of leather plates connected with each other by thin leather straps and more effective than earlier axes and spears, so technological progress began to serve the military. Already in 3500 BC the first warriors appeared in Mesopotamia wearing armor made of small metal plates connected with leather straps, metal helmets with shields and spears in their hands. And they fought not only on foot, but also on four-wheeled chariots, which in that distant time at the time they did not harness horses, but donkeys. At about the same time, the tribes that lived in the present-day southern Russian steppes were able to tame the wild steppe horses and learn to harness them to fast two-wheeled chariots, which gave them a significant advantage in battles with the enemy's foot soldiers. The fact that the pastoral tribes of the steppe Volga region used the horse as a riding animal is evidenced by the remains of horse harness found by archaeologists in ancient burials. The most important invention, one might even say the discovery of that time, was the horse's reins, which made the horse manageable and obedient, which was especially important in battle. So ancient warriors gradually accumulated knowledge and skills, which over time came in handy for the knightly class. Creative thought did not slacken, and very soon in their desire to protect themselves from the enemy's weapons, ancient warriors learned to make such effective armor that they can reasonably be considered a prototype of the most perfect knightly equipment. The ancient Assyrians already made armor not only of copper and bronze metal plates, but also of iron. These plates, sewn on thick leather, became impermeable to arrows. Their helmets had a spherical conical shape, almost the same as those used by the knights. The large round shields of the ancients were covered with several layers of leather, and the troops included not only mounted archers, but also lancemen, who had a helmet, armor, round shield, and spear, the entire later arsenal of knights. The Scythians, as well as the Sarmatians and other nomadic tribes of the northern Black Sea, had powerful bows, armor made of metal plates, as well as long spears, which they had to hold with both hands. In addition, they had long swords, which they used for cutting from the horse. In ancient Greece they learned how to make one-piece metal armor from copper and bronze, on a cuirass, so-called armor consisting of two halves to protect the body. Polesno reproduced the musculature of the owner helmets with the Greeks, just as later knights could protect the whole head and face and be one piece, or consist of several separate movable parts, for example have earpieces, which if desired can be raised. More simple and cheap armor was made of glued or sewn in several layers strips of linen fabric, in the form of metal armor. The Sarmatians and the horsemen of Alexander the Great's cavalry used long spears for equestrian combat and held them with two hands, so heavy were they. The The warriors who used them usually had no shields, and although their armor was very similar to that of medieval knights, still there was one important and conspicuous circumstance by which one could distinguish one from the other. The ancient warriors did not have the most common. The ancient warriors did not have the most common stirrups. Neither did the Roman horsemen, who, like medieval knights, wore chainmail made of woven iron rings. Not only the stirrups didn't exist then, but also a solid saddle, to which stirrups were fastened. On horseback in those days one would put a cloth mat on the horse's back, or just a hide of some animal. If there was a spear, we had to act with two hands, and if there were no spears, we just threw them at the enemy. Especially hard was the situation of the riders with heavy weapons. At the moment of ramming they could easily fall from the horse. By the way, not every horse was good enough for such a rider. Not only he had to be hardy, a horseman in armor weighed a lot, he had to be taught not to be afraid of the spearhead which sometimes flashed close to his face, not to be afraid of other horses coming toward him, loud shouts and glitter of weapons, and, at the same time, to obey his rider. So it is not surprising that armored riders similar to knights, but without strong, tough saddle and stirrups prevented so late, almost at the end of the ancient world. They were, wrote the Roman historian, the legged troops. The iron plates covered all the parts so closely that the ligaments matched the body movements perfectly, and the guards were so well fitted to the cussa that the whole body was encased. These riders were called cataphractarii, or cataphracts, from the word cataphract, armor, and clibanarii. Apparently the Romans gave their riders this last name as a joke, because the word they used for baking bread in marching conditions was clibanus, an iron stove like our brzwika. Cataphractarians attacked in close formation, and first they bombarded the enemy with onions and then swept away with lances. Being invulnerable in the ranks, they became prey even for the light cavalry that caught them with harnesses, if the cataphractarii order fell apart for some reason. Those ancient horsemen were very similar to knights, but the real knights of those days were still far away.